Hello friends. I'm Dr. Sapna from Institute of Management, Nirma University. On at the outset, I'm thankful to Gujarat University for giving me this opportunity to interact with you. The topic of my presentation today is rural marketing opportunities and prospects. Right. So in this another 70 to 75 minutes, we'll be talking about the role of rural markets in Indian market, keeping into account the Indian scenario. And at the end of the presentation, I'll be talking about that what are the research prospects of rural market as a researcher, right? So let me start with my presentation. Right. So I hope you are able to see with my presentation. Right? So it is rural market prospects and opportunities. And I'll be talking about first the definition, and then we will be talking about what are the different portfolios in which the rural aspect is being considered, and then what could be the future of rural markets. So when I say rural markets, we are talking about the rural areas. Now, places, when you take into account the definition of rural market, it talks about the places without a municipality, corporation, cantonment, or any notified area. Population of the rural market is considered to be less than 5,000, and the main source of the income comes from agriculture. And finally, the fourth point when you talk about a rural area is density should be less than 400 persons per square kilometer. Now, this is a very general definition when you talk about rural markets. But when you say rural marketing from this respect, it says that rural marketing is defined as something which is managed in, in assessing and simulating the consumer's purchasing power, especially when you're talking about any product and services, right? So when we were talking about a product, then the same product may have a different value when you are talking about an urban market, but the same product may have a different value when you talk about a rural market. Now, for example, if I say it to be uh, uh, Colgate, then Colgate tooth powder becomes important aspect when it talks about a rural market. But Colgate toothpaste with uh, with certain type of features, say for example charcoal, we say salt, becomes important when we're talking about an urban market. So product remaining the same, the basic characteristics definitely varies in the rural as per the urban market, and that is why when you say rural customers, then it is very important that we create some type of satisfaction, because end of the day organizational objective is to gain profit, and with the passage of time we have been seeing that the rural markets are becoming saturated, right? The other definition as per the census says that it is several hamlets demographic by physical boundaries. So maximum population 5,000, population density 400 square meters, 400 square meter population density, and 75% of the male population should be engaged in the non-agri activities, right? But then this definition is having a certain limitation, because rural is not defined, nor is, and there is an upper limit of the population for the villages. Moreover, when I talk about an RBI, then RBI says that all location with a population up to 10,000 happens to be the rural market. So semi-urban, all locations with a population between 10,000 to 1 lakh will be considered to be rural. Whereas when you talk about brands like LG, brands like FMCG, they have a different definition. So in a nutshell, we can say that the rural per se is defined by different type of organization, by different type of companies in a different manner. What could be the reason? The reason is very simple. We see that the potential as a marketer will vary. When I say toothpaste, then automatically the population density will derive the sales. But when I say a washing machine, or when I say it to be a television, then definitely the population will have a different demand, where when we compare uh, urban versus rural. And that is why the different companies have a different targets, and different targets have different achievements per se. Now, interestingly, you can take it further, that when you are talking about a brand, I was just referring to this LG, that all population centers other than 7 metros are considered to be rural. Right. So, or we consider them to be semi-urban. Now, again, this particular definition has an limitation, because population criteria is not considered at all. It is just to be considered to be metros versus non-metros, whereas Planning Commission talks about that the town characteristics are population between 15,000 are considered to be rural. So, see, if you try to see the definitions from the beginning, what we say till what I have been presented here, they say that the definition of rural varies. So, what is rural? Right. So, if you have to really work on the research, or you have to really work on financial sectors, or you have to work on product categories, then it's very important to understand the characteristics of rural India. Now, why today my topic is rural, right? So, after definition, I'll be just considering this parameter very important, that why rural? Because 70% of the population, when we talk about India, are rural. Now, when I say rural, we are talking about the purchasing parity, we are talking about the demographic factors, we are talking about the different type of income categories, because slowly and steadily the markets of urbans are getting saturated. You have a competitions from national players, you have competitions from multinational players. So whether it is national companies or whether it is a multinational companies, they have slowly and steadily started looking into the markets beyond that, right? Because somewhere we have to see into count the business potentials. Moreover, if you see characteristic features of a rural market, then we will try to see and explore that how the rural markets are different. If you take into account the example of, say, Bandhan Bank, right? So it's a small sector bank which emerged from a rural sector, and now if you try to see, it has actually captured the complete urban hemisphere, right? So we try to see that it is becoming a very crucial factor to understand this market from all different dimensions, right? Moving further, we try to see there are two marketing processes when we say. So there are products which are moving from urban to rural market, and at the same time, we are talking about markets from rural to urban. Right. So when I say urban to rural, I'm talking about way back when we are talking about green revolution. We started talking about white revolutions. We started seeing that the products started moving. Different variety of products started moving. Say, for example, we talk about pesticides, we are talking about fertilizers, we are talking about FMCG products, we are talking about tractors, we are talking about bicycles. These products slowly and steadily started moving from urban markets to rural market in a very, very phased manner. Right. When I say phased manner, we talked about first a green revolution, and then we started talking about FMCG products, and then we started talking about a durable, and now we are talking about the online business markets, which has actually emerged into the rural areas, right? So, good example happens to be the Snapdeal, good example happens to be the Amazon. So, there's a lot of potential for the companies, because there is not only a large sector of population, but this population do have money. But the only thing is their orientation for the spending is very different, right? So similarly, when you are talking about the other aspect, which is becoming all the more important for us, is now the movement of the products are also moving from rural to urban market. So whether we are talking about eggs, whether we are talking about fruits, whether we are talking about milk, whether we are talking about handicrafts, huge markets. So this is not only from rural to urban, but I'll say from rural to international markets, the business has started growing very, very rapidly. So uh, that is why we have mentioned to be a two-way marketing process. Moreover, if you try to see if you try to see this marketing aspect, then there are two type of business which are moving. One is the third aspect. So one we talked about urban to rural. Second, we talked about rural to urban. And the third process, which is now been becoming very more important, is rural to rural, right? So when we are talking about a market which is rural to rural, it includes all the activities between two villages. It has been from ages. One village is good in probably a group of villages are good in probably weaving, but the other group of villages are good in handicrafts. The third group of villages is very good in cattle. So there is a mutual exchange of the products which has been taking, and now with the passage of time, as the connectivity has increased, as we have seen that the telecom has increased, rural to rural exchange of the products has also become very, very rapid uh, process, right? So because the proximity has increased. And finally, there is very interesting aspect which is important for us to understand is the new aspect which is called to be a rural area, right? So when I'm talking about rural, it is somewhere an overlap between a rural and an urban. So when we say a Tragad village, right, or when we say Kalol, right? So these particular aspects are one which are just a merge between Ahmedabad and the neighboring areas. So जितने भी गांव लगे हुए हैं, which is close in the proximity, we call them to be a corridor villages because they share the same corridor with the urban market. So here, if you see this market is very interesting to study because the physical features are quite like rural, but their buying behavior pattern is quite like urban, and that is why deep rural sociology has been now reading this particular aspect because this market is very interesting to study because purchasing parity may it is more like urban, but buying parity, but sorry, the income pattern they are quite like urban. But when you're talking about the purchasing pattern, they are quite like, right? So this is one aspect which is interesting to study because there are certain, if you try to see their investment patterns, if you try to see their buying patterns, it's very important to study how do they spend, because how do they spend, how do they earn, does becomes important aspect for any researcher because his thinking process, or when you're working for a small sector banks, or when you are working for MSMEs, or when you are talking about you know what do you call it to be small udyogs, right? Or so these type of studies becomes very important for you to understand. Now, why it is a need and important to the rural market? Because the rural market, if you try to see, is continuously developing. So why they are developing? Because they are more networked, there is more opportunities, government schemes have been increased. And at the same time, the marketers feel that this market has a lot of potentials, right? So there's a huge potential in terms of expansion. At the same time, there is huge potential to grow not only in one particular category but across many categories. So it's no longer कि अगर we are talking about an anti-aging cream, then that anti-aging cream is only available in the urban market. Now that particular aspect is available in all sort of markets, right? So the rural market share is on the road for expansion, and especially when you're talking about the liberalization from 1980 1990, this particular category kept on moving into the business in a lot sector, right? Moreover, if you try to see the population density, right? So we see that if you see, there are 6,34,202 villages. See the number of villages, right? Within that, if you try to see, if you try to see the population with 500 की population के बीच में there are 2,36,000. So there are small villages which are having a small pockets of population density. Moreover, 10,000 के ऊपर के population के villages हैं 39,976, very few in number, and most of the population are between 1,000 to 5,000 population density. So this particular graph gives an implication to us that rural market is highly scattered. Now, अगर ये market इतना scattered है और जैसे जैसे scatter हो गया है और जैसे scattered हो गया है, probably reaching to them becomes a challenge. Understanding them is a very challenge. Media vehicles reaching to them is a big challenge. So it becomes important to understand the demographic variation and why this variation is changing. Now, if you see this particular diagram, I'm just zooming it up. So, this was a rural population was 800 million, and if you see at 2010, the graph of the rural population was more like a bell shape. Now, when I'm saying a bell shape, probably people who were earning less than 1 USD were 400, right? 400 million. Between 1 to 5 USD were 350 millions, and people who were earning 50 million people were earning approximately 5 USD and above. But with the passage of time, if you see from 2010, this diagram took a very different turn. From bell, it became a diamond. Now, when you see a diamond, then if you see the population with 250, जो 400 थे वो अब 250 हो गए, the 350 की population जो 1 to 5 USD earn कर रहे थे, now they have become 500, right? And the people who were uh, above 5 USD have now become 150. So if you see, this particular diagram clearly gives us a very important signal that this market is not only growing, but this market has tremendous potential in terms of monetary value. तो जब monetary value high होती है, तो लोगों की purchasing parity high होती है. And when I'm saying that their purchasing parity is higher, indicates that a lot of commercialization is going to take place. That is why, and this indicates a second different aspect, that a lot of companies will not only be interested to do business directly, but they will try to piggyback on the existing players and try to work on this particular market much more, because it's more like a market which is more in masses. और जब मार्केट मासेस की तरफ होता है तो अर्निंग कंपनी की बहुत हाई हो जाती है क्योंकि वॉल्यूम्स में बिजनेस में. So this is a very clear indication of it. Moreover, if you see a rural market, then we are also talking about rural market in terms of towns, small towns, because there are 7,500 towns with 25% purchasing power. And when you're saying town, interestingly, if you see most of the new IMs, most of the education sector, most of the manufacturing unit, most of the IT companies have started eyeing this particular small towns because एक यहाँ पे land cheaper है, दूसरा they are trying to attract the workforce from the neighboring villages, and these small towns becomes the hub for not only earning but also these are the towns where people come to shop. अगर आप बोले कि small towns, small villages near Kalol, they come to Kalol to make a shopping hub, right? So Kalol happens to be a shopping hub for at least 50 villages around that, right? So uh, these these small villages probably will take a turn of a towns, and towns becomes interesting because towns तक पहुंचना companies के लिए easy होता है. Moreover, we are trying to see that a lot of shift is taking place. People are no longer into farming. They have non-farm activities also. And moreover, we have seen there is a better infrastructure, or road connections have increased, communication have increased, internet penetration has taken place, people have improved their literacy rate, income patterns have changed. Moreover, we try to see the rural consumption penetration level of FMCG products has increased equal to now urban. This is what, as per the recent report by McKinsey, right, which is leveled up at 2017. It says that the penetration of FMCG products is equal, चाहे वो rural markets है, चाहे वो urban market है, indicates that people have aspirations. Moreover, if you try to see the agriculture's reforms are leading to explosions in demand, and we see that even agricultural facilities have increased. So this has, in a way, given more money or more pocket incomes. Interestingly, if you try to see the spending turn, 64% of the expenditure and 33% of the savings come from rural market. Now, this is as per the KPMG report. 67% of the rural connectivity, road connectivity, 30% of the tele density, and 60% of the electrification of the villages have taken place. Indicates they are becoming more commercial. There are 200 million mobile users. Implication, the communication, or probably you are able to reach them in a more better manner, and probably if you are able to reach them in a more better manner, I'm creating more awareness of my product. There are 14 million DTS subscribers, shows that people have aspiration for entertainment. And interestingly, if all these are happening, there are 87 million Kisan credit cards, shows that people have aspirations to spend, and people do believe, apart from saving in gold, apart from saving in land, they are also talking about even saving and even expending to different type of performer. So this is a snapshots of what we talk about a rural market. And interestingly, if you try to see the difference, that how rural and urban are different, then we try to see this is the difference. I've checked to chalk down the difference between the rural and the urban market. So if you see the rural markets, 1 minute, if you try to see the rural market, then the price people are in urban, they're sensitive, but in rural market, they are very sensitive, right? So ऐसा नहीं है कि उनके पास पैसे नहीं है, but हाँ, उनके लिए बहुत important है. They believe that if 10 rupees note is there and if 10 rupees note gets broken, right? So it will be, it is gone, right? So that's the spirit of not using the 10 rupees is very much high. Not that they want to, they don't have money at times, right? So sensitivity is there, and moreover, they believe that 10 rupees note पे उनको ऐसा product खरीदना है जिसकी multiple utility होती है, right? So that is why for the same 10 rupees note, they are looking for a multi-utility aspect. Desired level of desired acceptable, it's medium to high, they accept a new product. But when you say a new product in the rural market, it is very difficult to accept the product. Channels, when you talk about an urban market, we are talking about various channels. We say online channels, we say offline channels, we say apps, we say catalogs, lot of channels, right? But when you say rural market, here I am not talking about the markets of Gujarat or Haryana or Punjab. I'm typically talking about those markets, a huge number of populations, scattered populations from east of India towards east of UP. And if you have seen the movie of Kedarnath, you could see that how small villages are scattered, where even if people have money, they don't have availability of the product. So there, probably the channels are hearts, mandis, shandies. So these are the places where you get the product. Because the transport facility is average or at times below average, if you are talking about hills or if you're talking about deserts, of course, reach becomes a problem, and that is why the availability of the product becomes very limited. Moreover, if you see an advertisement in all sorts of media, similar advertisement, but yeah, when I say advertisement in the rural market, it has to be multilingual. It has to be a simple, linear messages so that you're able to understand it. And if you see sales promotion, it needs to be understand that people at times don't go for promotion. They say "इससे अच्छा तो price कम कर दीजिए," right? So there is a lot of difference between an urban and a rural market, right? So I'll be before I talk about an urban and a rural characteristics of a rural market. I'll talk about that. How do the rural markets? Now this is little scientific way that how the rural markets emerged, right? So on the screen, if you try to see, we have put down 5 different methods in which the rural evolution took place. Now, first happens to be the trickle down approach. Trickle down was an approach where the companies started feeling कि ठीक है अर्बन मार्केट में बिका तो बिका नहीं बिका तो उसको हम रूरल मार्केट्स में बेच देंगे और रूरल मार्केट्स के लिए उन्होंने क्या किया कि they started doing CSR activities and they started believing that फाइन इफ यू डू CSR उसकी ब्रांड इमेज की जो इफेक्ट है वो हमें अर्बन मार्केट को मिलेंगे. So this was the approach of the companies when they started looking into the rural market. From that hemisphere, they moved into the second phase where they're talking about the market to be an undifferentiated approach. Now, when you say an undifferentiated approach, where the companies said कि ठीक है, the top of urban market is quite similar to the top of a rural market, right? So I'm talking about people who are rich of the urban market, maybe similar to the richness of the people of the urban market. So after we cater to the rural market, urban market, we can cater to the rural market aspect. So their belief system was entirely different. But again, the approach was undifferentiated. उन्होंने कोई भी नई strategy नहीं बनाई in order to reach to the urban market. So it was simple way. यहाँ नहीं बिका, अगर यहाँ के urban market है और जिसको ये product खरीदना है तो वो rural से urban market में आएगा और ये product खरीदेगा. So the approach was quite undifferentiated. Later on, in the third phase, they differentiated the market, where they differentiated in the terms of awareness, they differentiated in the terms of availability, the type of products, but then they could not differentiate it in terms of the various versions of the product, right? So उन्होंने बोला कि ठीक है awareness बढ़ाएंगे और हम जो product rural में बेचते हैं वही हम urban में बेचेंगे. So here they started changing this strategy, but it was not that major change which they wanted to bring forward. By fourth phase of evolution, they started talking about an approach which is bottom of the pyramid approach. Now there came the revolution in the rural market, and if you have heard about the companies like or services like Arvind Eye Care Services or a Project Shakti, which I will be a case which I'll be discussing at the end. They started becoming a revolution where they said that if you have to reach to this particular market, you have to pour money in this particular market. You have to talk about a product features which is low toned and you have to make them available in the price which they are ready to pay. So approach is reach the bottom of the pyramid, and there's a very classic book by C.K. Prahlad which talks about the bottom. The bottom, why bottom? अगर आपने शुरू का मेरा diagram देखा होगा, the bottom of the pyramid says that the base of the pyramid is huge. And since the base of the pyramid is huge, if you're able to reach to this base of the pyramid, probably you will be able to generate more money. And if you are able to generate more money, probably you will work on the cost of operations, right? So whether it was eye care services, whether it was Project Shakti, whether it was different brands, or when a good example of it is Chick shampoo, they started talking about reaching to the product with the price which people are ready to pay and the product which they will be ready to accept. in the manner which can be, so they cannot it you cannot create awareness, so you have to make people of that village be a part of you and then sell the product into the market. So interestingly, this particular aspect talked about bottom of the pyramid approach, a very, very successful approach by a lot of companies. And till date, people are using the bottom of the pyramid approach. So जिसको हम और एक word में बोलते हैं disruption. If you see in the recent past, Geo did disruption, right? They created a disruption and they made the product available to the masses, right? And finally, the approach which Bandhan Bank is using, the approach which I don't know whether you people have heard or not, which has been used by Godrej Chotu Cool, is an innovative, inclusive approach, right? So here, right from designing the product, right from uh, manufacturing the product, pricing the product, you have to involve the rural population, and even for the selling, we have to involve the rural. So that is why it is called to be an integrated, innovative, and inclusive approach. Right. So microfinance institutions, if you try to see, are working in beyond bottom of the pyramid. They are working in a integrated, innovative, inclusive approach. Right? Bandhan Bank, classic example of innovative, inclusive approach by the companies. Project Shakti or Shakti Amma is an example of integrated. So you have to reach to them by, or Vodafone M-Pesa is an example of innovative, exclusive approach by the companies, right? So this is the modern philosophy. These are all the philosophies of business. Now, from here, from this particular slide, the takeaway as a faculty or you people are on faculty, you should try to understand that how the business aspect is changing as the environment is changing, how business aspect is changing because the urban markets are changing, how the company's approach is changing, because end of the day you have to talk about not only profit but you have to talk about profit maximization. So this gives a lot of insight to us that yes, this particular market, you have to study different business models, you have to study different type of product categories if you really want to work as a researcher, or probably you have to identify a different models if you are trying to do a research or try to work on with the other researchers to build up on a particular model for the companies, right? So it is both as a researcher, as and not only as a researcher, but also you can partner with different companies to understand that how a unique model can be developed for this particular markets. Right. So if I try to see the characteristics of this particular market, then the total population, if you see how the total population is growing, you see in millions, the rural population is growing very fast. Apart from that, if you see male versus female population, yeah, quite close to each other. But moreover, number of rural households uh, uh, patterns are changing, and we have seen that now the rural household pattern is no longer a bigger families, but they have downsized the family to be more nuclear family. Interesting to understand that they are nuclear families, because when they're in nuclear family, of course, there are challenges in that particular market, but their aspiration levels, or probably the focus is no longer on food and clothing, but it is also on the needs. It can be needs related to education. It can be needs related to developing career development of the child. It can be need developed into the aspiration levels. Or so this will make people buy the products from different type of sectors. Aspirations to build different varied type of houses, right? So that is why brands like Asian Paints, cement, pipes, Tata Shakti, they have actually penetrated into this market because people want to shift their aspirations, especially when they talk about the housing patterns or probably the living standards. Coming to the next, this going ahead to the demographics, it says that the data says that 35% of the population is in the consuming age group between 15 to 34 years. That shows that people who are into the consuming age will be now buying different variety of products. Literacy rate has jumped up, so people know about the desire, they come to know their value of the product. Of course, with that, the family is becoming smaller. Land fragmentation definitely has increased. So earnings from the lands have reduced, but at the same time we have seen that the education aspiration has increased, and that made a lot of IITs, IIMs, people aspiration from IS have increased in a way. So somewhere or other we see that skill development has increased, and people have not and this in a nutshell have made people shift their occupation from agree to non-agree. सो एग्री पॉपुलेशन और नॉन एग्री पॉपुलेशन की हम बार बार तभी बात करते हैं क्योंकि एग्री पॉपुलेशन से एक डिजायर्ड सेट ऑफ इनकम आता है, बट व्हेन यू से नॉन एग्री, probably the income level is also varying, and we have different benefits of non-agri occupation because agriculture में तो ठीक है, फसल आई कटी उसके बाद you have money, and but then people have, because people don't earn perennially, they start saving the money to large extent, and they don't try to spend, right? And if they don't try to spend, probably if I'm marketing a product, or if you're trying to sell certain, even if you are talking about a banking strategy, they will stop investing in them, because they feel कि ठीक है एक बार हमने invest कर दिया, अभी पता नहीं कब जरूरत पड़ जाए. So but when you are talking about a non-agri income, then people have a regular source of income, and there, of course, spending and saving patterns becomes more consistent. When you talk about a land holding, interestingly, you see then, as per the census, the people with the small land holdings have definitely increased. Marginal level farmers are more in number, but large farmers are very बहुत छोटे लोग बहुत छोटा अमाउंट है जहाँ पे लार्ज फार्मर्स हैं जिनको हम बड़े किसान और जमींदार बोलते हैं, बट छोटे छोटे लैंड होल्डिंग्स बहुत है. That in a way gives a not a good signal that people land holdings are very small, so people don't know. People get very less amount of spending income. Moreover, 36.4 villages have a population below 500. So even if I want to reach to them, छोटी पॉपुलेशन है. व्हेन वी गो टू द विलेजेस इवन इन गुजरात जहाँ पे 500 से 1000 के बीच में पॉपुलेशन है, कई बार लोगों के पास पैसा होता है और दे से कि ठीक है वी वांट टू बाय 2 kgs ऑफ शक्कर और शुगर, दे से कि नहीं हम आपको केवल 500 ग्राम शुगर देते हैं क्योंकि हम इतनी ही बड़े शहर से लेके आते हैं एंड हमको पूरे गांव में बेच. Small thing, but then reaching to the palmal in terms of economic, operational value, it becomes a very challenge because the population size is very small. So reaching, maintaining your business operations becomes a very important aspect. Moreover, villages with a population 2000, most populous with a 50% of the rural population and 60% of the rural wealth. So people, जहाँ पे most villages जो वो होते हैं जिनकी 50% of the rural population, if you try to see, is giving 60% of the rural wealth. So if you see, with the passage of time, we have to see those villages which are growing, which are bigger villages, but smaller villages, of course, is a challenge for the rural marketers. Moreover, if you see, then a minute. Uh, Panchayat Raj, if you see, has provides a three-tier system of self-government, and in all state with a population of over 2 million, with elections every 5 years. But villages with a population of 5,000 or a cluster of village population form their own panchayat. So even the governing system is very different, and minimum of 33% of the seat are reserved for the caste. And the tribes of women. Again, interestingly, we have seen in the past literature work that with the occupation, with the caste system, probably with men and women orientation, different orientation, the buying patterns or the commercializations have dramatically increased apart from the development plan. So development plan एक तरफ रख लें, पर अगर आप कास्ट सिस्टम ले लें या फिर आप पॉपुलेशन डेंसिटीज ले लें या फिर आप मेल डोमिनेटेड या फीमेल डोमिनेटेड पॉपुलेशन ले लें, तो ऑटोमेटिकली वहाँ की इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटीज उस जगह की entirely different होती हैं as compared to the other places, just because the orientation or the mindset is different. Moreover, if we talk about the role of elders in the rural market, very important. And but with the passage of time, as the youth are becoming influenced by the literacy rate, we have seen that they are becoming an important aspect in the decision making, right? So houses of the village are moreover clustered. अगर आप देखें तो it's based on religion, based on the caste. They try to group together. It gives an implications to a marketer or a researcher कि what makes them behave and what parameters make a particular caste behave in a particular manner, and why how this particular group people are affecting our economic status, right? So there a particular caste, a particular religion will not try to appreciate a particular type of occupation or education level, buying of certain products. बहुत छोटी चीजें हैं, but it does affect our economic scenarios, right? Moreover, if we see the graph, we see that there is an rural technological environment has changed a lot. There has been a rapid mechanization, and tractors near have doubled from 1994 to 2006. So that indicates that productivity sector is increasing very rapidly, and this paves more aspect to the wealth of the people. Technological environment is changing, so it's whether you're talking about agriculture workers, when you're talking about, if you see the animal power has been decreased, the tractor power has increased, the power tillers are decreasing, electric motors are increasing. Slowly and steadily, if you try to see, there is a rapid changes in the scenario which is taking place. This I have been already telling you that farm to non-farm income is becoming 40 to 60, so more stable income. Shift from, interestingly, one more thing has happened, that there is a shift from food grains to the cash crops because people are becoming more aware. And offline activities like poultry, fisheries, dairy have started emerging more. So that gives a lot of potential for the people to earn more, spend more, and companies to look into this market. Again, as per McKinsey report, it has been identified that India, of course, which I have said initially also, consists of 238,596 villages that house 7 lakh 42 742 490 and 639 people. So this, despite rising urbanization, we see 63% of the India's population continue to live in the rural areas, and that is why this particular area or this particular market is very important for us to study from a sociology point of view, from an economic point of view, from a commercial point of view, from a scientific point of view, and for researcher and academicians, it becomes very important because any company may look into this market with a new model, because अगर companies ने नए models rural markets के लिए नहीं develop किए, then they may never enter into this market, because the sooner the better you can cash upon that, because earnings have increased. And according to the market research conducted by Nielsen, it says that rural segment is going to grow at a healthy pace to 8 to 10% per annum, which is expected to add 100 billion in consumption demand by 2017. So probably consumption is increasing, shifting is taking place. So it is important now for the companies to look into the market, not only for selling the basic product, but of course the aspirational product. So, moreover, the productivity, if you see the model of agriculture produce market committee law, does propose reforms in the form treating the entire state as a single market and you know removal of the products and vegetables from the purview of a mandatory trading. So we see they are slowly and steadily moving into this market, right? Moreover, if you see, then 27 service sector is growing in the rural market very rapidly. A critical role is being improved in the rural market. Now, sectors like transport, storage have recorded a reasonable growth in the rural areas. However, there is need to increase the contributions when you talk about services in the rural market, because when you're talking about healthcare services, when we're talking about banking services, when we're talking about insurance services, yes, these are the sectors which actually has to be reviewed, because with the passage of time we are not able to reach with the, though we have opened more banks, though we are talking about government is pouring so much of money into the health sector, but yes, we are not able to reach them this particular market because of our poor infrastructure facilities, or probably too much dependent on the private sector have have made us fail to reach into the markets which actually look forward. So it may be SBI, but then SBI may have ATMs all over, but then what about opening banks, but people not, contributing to the uh, savings there. So it definitely is challenge. So there is a strong push needs to be there, not only in the agriculture for the perishable items. Perishable items important because we are talking about supply chain in the rural market, because when you say tomatoes, when you say potatoes, when you say any other farm yields, probably 10% of the product get perished on the way when they are moving from the rural to the urban markets, right? So somewhere we have to talk about research needs to understand that what is the role of cold storage, what is the role of logistics, what is the role of transportation, because these 10% is a big cost to the companies, because by the time the product reaches the urban sector, जो 2 रुपए के किलो टमाटर गांव में होते हैं, we get it down at 80 rupees. So a market which needs to be studied when it comes to the supply chain aspect. When you say rural India is buying, aren't you selling? India's rural consumers have progressed well beyond, as we have seen, and thanks to the public and the private sector initiative, there has been considerable progress in terms of socially, economical in many parts, and governments have definitely come up with the schemes like Manrega, a national rural employment scheme, and a midday meal programs which have definitely increased the disposable income. लोगों के पास कम से कम 200-400 रुपए होते हैं दिहाड़ी के, जिसको वो खर्च apart from eating and food and shelter they are spending on other items. It's very important that people spend, right? Younger generations again has more aspirations, so they are also looking for alternative sources to supplement their income and their family income. So that is making the total family income more bigger, right? Fast moving consumer goods, if you try to see, it's a semi urban market is estimated somewhere around 100 billion. It is anticipated that it is going to be increased as CAGR at 17.4%, right? And rural FMCG market accounts for 40% of the overall FMCG market. So good signal for the companies. Moreover, I was just trying to see some chart here, and if you see, I just try to zoom up. It says that non-food to food, if you see, is villages. 33% of the villages account for 80% of the current FMCG sales in the rural India. Interestingly, very important aspect that it's these the key drivers in this market is definitely the population, it is health sector, and of course the market infrastructure, which is increasing its growth in this particular market. Moreover, another chart research which I had identified is, the forecast of the good monsoon is expected to increase the the FMCG market. And Nielsen recently said in a study that the sector will see a high single-digit growth rate year by year in the ongoing sector. This is 2018 data. It says from April to June. So it is said that food category growths will beat the personal care and home care, right? So somewhere people are also looking into the creams and probably the deodorants, other thing, which is very significant in the rural market. Of course, I'm not going to do this in detail. Uh, um, I come to the very interesting fact when you talk about a rural market is the rule of 4 A's. So when you talk about a 4 A's, we are talking about the availability. Availability becomes a challenge because the market is quite widespread. The market is having high distribution cost. We are talking about poor roads, storage facilities are there. There is a damage of goods, electricity's problem, people can't store the product for a longer information of time. There is no retailer credit which goes on, and the relationship between the distributor and the redistributor, there's a long chain which is there. So people are depending on hearts, melas, shandies for it. And moreover, if you see, in order to beat these challenges, the companies like ITC has come. So it's a very interesting model for you people to understand that how the ITC, Chopal Sagar have come up with a rural distribution. So it's a win-win model for the buyer as well as the seller. They started with their business process in Madhya Pradesh, and now they have actually expanded in the other aspect of the same. Moreover, there is copied this particular aspect is the Haryali Kisan Bazaar and all. So, moreover, in order to make the products available, the companies are now having a public distribution system. They are having a tie-in partners with petrol pumps, post offices, right? You have a cooperative societies. You have, different companies which are looking into a hub and spoke models and trying to reach. When you say Coke, when you say Product Shakti, these are the companies which are actually reaching into it, in a very, very different manner. Affordability refers to the ability of the customers to pay for the product, and the prices of the products should be set to match the income level of the customers, right? So the product is including the pricing, it is including the income level, it is the price point. So these are the products which are actually affecting the purchasing pattern of the product. So you have a coin packaging, you have to people, because affordability, people have a small income levels, right? So they are looking for the products which are less. And so you have a chick shampoo for 50 paisa, you have a 1 rupee, you have a 2 rupees, you have a 5 rupees. So there are different price points. And moreover, there are bubble packs for which the people are reaching to the markets, right? So the next aspect is the role of acceptability. So, implies that the product should be readily acceptable by the rural customers. So, why people are not accepting the product is people are looking for what you call it to be a product which is multi-utility aspect. And I don't want a single tub machine. I want two tub machine because there is a problem of water. I don't want a product which is too much dependent on electricity. I'm looking for a product which can be managed by electricity, solar power, or any other power. So definitely acceptability is very important. So they do look for a product, but the type of products which they are looking forward is entirely different, right? Moreover, coming forward to it is the basis of segmentation. So these are the 4 A's, and moreover the fourth A, which of course I somewhere missed in between, acceptability, is the role of awareness. Now give me a moment. One of the contact programs is the awareness. Sometimes people look for the product, but people are not aware. people are not know how to use the product, and that is why it's very important in the rural market that you have to educate the people about the product, give them a trial offer, and that will make them probably buy the product. And then the classic example here is of the chick shampoo. When they launched the product in the rural markets, they actually taught the youngsters how to have a clean hair, right? And based on that, they started selling the market. So this is the basic of segmentation in the rural market. Segmentation is apart from the geographical and demographic and behavior. The market here is divided in different type of socio-economic strata. It is R1 villages, R2 villages, R3. Now this is made on pakka houses or a semi-pakka houses. They try to classify the image in this manner, right? Further, if you try to see in the rural markets, sorry, there was an issue related. Yeah. So if you see the markets, the product mix, if you see, people look for a very simple, easy to use product. Should account to the conditions. Unit size should be small. They want to identify the product with colors, brand names, simple languages, and so these are the typical things which they look for the product. Price by manner, we have just done that. The price they look forward is uh, uh, you know. Dependent on the income of the consumer. So low price, high price, there are different type of product. Place, of course, they look. I just gave you the example that they look for a different type of distributors, sub distributors. You have self help groups. You have NGOs. You have people selling the products in the bicycle. So different ways to reach to the consumers. If you have seen movie Kedarnath, people actually started distributing the product through even animals, because a landslide means you're not able to reach, right? But when you're talking about promotions, people, a lot of folk medias are used. Complexity of the rural market is very higher, so that makes people go for puppet shows, video shows, mobile vans, van demonstrations, because the rural environment is very dynamic, right? So this gives a lot of insight into it. Of course, there are challenges in the rural market. Um, I'll quickly take the challenges. The literacy rate, seasonal demand of the product is very higher, right? And if you see transportation, distribution, communication issues are there. People still have money, but the look is very traditional. Buying decisions, of course, are focused only by the head of the family. Media, of course, role of media is quite related, and people have different, agar kisan ka beta hai, they will prefer him getting into the same business. That becomes a bond. Moreover, cultural factors do dominate into to large aspect to them, right? Moreover, if you try to talk about it, if you see the rural dividend, very important, the rural healthcare sector needs to be improved. You have durable consumer companies which are into banking, finance, construction, housing, great opportunities in the rural market. Moreover, if you see the rural dividends, you need to have a very focused strategies. The company have to understand that the rural consumers are different, rural ecosystems are different. Rural consumers have to be approached with the business minds and the social heart approach, uh, because somewhere or the other, if you try to see, we look into this market for a stability, and we are looking for affordability in the long run. So, moreover, if you take it to the last slide, because I'll be talking about the approaches. Successful mantra in the rural market is innovate, innovate, and innovate. You get into this market. Till you get into this market, you will not understand the market. So it's emotions. This emotions can be people from the academics, people from the industry. They have to go into the root level to understand this business market, because the mindset of the people is entirely different. The business model has to be very different, and then only you are talking about a reach. And finally, it is the role of inclusion. And when I say it is inclusion, then you have to include them in the business scenario, because till you include the rural people, they will never feel that they are a part of it, and if they don't feel they are part of the business, they will never buy the product, right? So I'll be talking about two major case studies. One case study is the Coca-Cola. The flat sales in the urban sales is very clear. From CCI, they should have shifted focus from an untapped to a tapped market. क्योंकि रूरल में कोको कोला मतलब ठंडा एंड ठंडा मतलब कोको कोला उनको ये लगा कि अब तक or when you see the ad of that time ad of uh, Amir Khan, who used to take out the Coca-Cola, uh, from the well, right? So Coca-Cola's rural market strategy is based on three A's: affordability, 5 रुपए का Coke; acceptability, ठंडा मतलब Coca-Cola; and availability means they could reach the people in the thermocol packets in the entire setup. Right? आप कहीं भी जाए कोक की बॉटल जरूर मिल जाती है, पेप्सी भले नहीं मिले. So that they followed a hub and spoke model to reach into this market. Interesting philosophy, right? And moreover, on their part, the hub appointed a small distributors in joining area में जाके रिक्शा पुलर्स के साथ जाके उन्होंने ये मार्केट को टैप किया. So very unique business model. And then next example is the Project Shakti, piloted in 2001 by Andhra Pradesh. The aim is very clear, that they are looking for rural distribution. Social goals are helping to achieve the business goal because they wanted to have a win-win partnership between HUL and rural consumers for mutual benefits and growth, right? So what they were looking forward was they started training the women and inclusion, and these women started distributing the products in the urban markets, and the products were sold door to door. पहले तो वहाँ की लेडीज को उन्होंने ट्रेन किया और लेडीज ही जाके घर घर जाके बांटने लगे और उनको कमीशन मिला. दिस गिव टू थिंग्स इनटू द माइंड्स ऑफ द पीपल. the women who were selling, they felt like an entrepreneur. उनको लगा हम भी कुछ कमा रहे हैं, और डोर टू डोर सेलिंग से उनको जो बेनिफिट्स होता था उनसे उनका घर चलता था. तो घर में दो हैंड से इनकम होने लगे, हस्बैंड की भी और वाइफ भी. मोर ओवर, automatically when you're going and selling the brand door to door, the brand image automatically builds up. Now coming on to the final thing which I intend to and of course these are the our training were very simple. 20,000 uh, when you are talking about the the different business model into the whole consideration, right? So we are talking about the after training, the 20,000 as an investment, which is mm, which is products have to be sold, and HUL vouchers are Shakti Amas with the bank from the credit card. On an average, the Shakti Amas makes 10% of the average on the product she sells. So 10% margin is a good margin for any retailers into count, right? So give me a minute or a two so that I can talk about the researchers. Um, right. So we are talking about it in this manner, that first the areas of research, of course, has happened to be. Give me a moment.
QR कोड स्कैन करना है
हाँ ते मैं लेक्चर रिकॉर्ड कर दी पई है ते So moving further, we are talking about a different research areas. First is rural consumer behavior, where we are talking about how the buying behavior of the people changes. Moreover, retail potential and strategies of the product and services, very important aspect to be studied. So as a researcher, we need to understand that how with the product and services in the retail sector, in the rural market, the business is going to change. Moreover, the markets in the rural, you have to have a very innovative strategy. So whether I'm talking about Coke, whether I'm talking about Chick shampoo, whether I'm talking about Nirma, whether I'm talking about Chotu Cool as a refrigerator, or LG Sapna refrigerator, or probably we are talking about Philips Twin radio, whatever, right? So you have to talk about a very innovative markets, right? Interestingly, the new areas of research has to be the role of schemes in the rural market. So different government schemes in the rural market will play a very different role, because government schemes on the rural market will pave a way. Uh, in, because when you're talking about Jan Dhan Yojana, when you're talking about Manrega, when you're talking about Sadak Yojana, it's we need to communicate this in the rural markets. So we have to see the impact of different schemes in the financial sector, in the manufacturing sectors, in the agri sector, and we have to understand that how you have to develop different business models so that we are able to generate the market returns. And finally, the three more areas which you can work as a researcher is the supply chain in the rural markets, because supply chain in the rural markets will play an important role both from rural to urban and from urban to rural. And rural marketing strategies across various industries need to be studied, because FMCG will have a different rural marketing strategies. Within FMCG, the shampoo will have a different strategy, the aging cream will have a different strategy, the Bormita will have a different strategies, right? So it's very important to study. Moreover, when I'm talking about a service sector, then education sector, healthcare sector, finance sector, telecommunication sector, entire service sector needs to understand that the business in rural markets will vary from Gujarat to Maharashtra, from Maharashtra to Haryana, and within Haryana, it may within UP to East UP to North UP, the business is going to change, and that is why the business model is going to change. The language barriers ought to come, right? So the business is going to change very rapidly. And finally, we have to also see the potential of rural products into the urban market. चाहे वो egg है, चाहे वो honey है, चाहे वो handloom clothes है. If you see, a lot of push is taking place from the urban to the rural market, because this market has to be different. It has to be honed differently, and it has to be, developed differently. And that is why the research in this areas had to look upon these thrust factors. So not only it is the thrust products in the rural market, it is the rural products into the urban markets which is going to play a very important role, right? So this makes me to the end of the uh, you know the presentation. So any query, anything in this regard, you can log on to you can connect to me at sapna@nirmauni.ac.in. I'm repeating, sapna@nirmauni.ac.in, or at 9898057821. I happen to be a marketing professor at the Institute of Management Nirma University, and my specialization service includes rural and retail market. I believe both rural and retail market happens to be a new sector which is to be looked upon, because rural retailing, चाहे वो टाटा है, चाहे वो गोदरेज है, चाहे वो आईटीसी है, सारी कंपनीज अब रूरल रिटेल पे आ गई हैं. सारे बैंक्स रूरल मार्केट्स की तरफ देख रहे हैं. FMCG और ड्यूरेबल तो है ही है, बिकॉज वो उनकी नीड्स है. But it's interesting to know that this sector will look forward for a lot of research potentials, because companies will look forward for the research data, because based on that research data, they are going to come up with different models, right? So with this, thank you so much, and hope this session was a learning to you people. Thank you so much, right? And happy learning in future. Thank you.